What if I gave you a permission slip that said, your job is to feel good? And what if I told you that the better you feel, the bigger impact you can make in the world? And in fact, that is the magical parenting strategy that we've all been searching for. Hey, I'm Heather Chauvin, wife, mother of 3 boys, former social worker, breadwinner, recovering hustler, and stage 4 cancer survivor. Beyond all of these titles and labels, I'm a human being just like you, attempting to navigate it all while feeling good. My goal on this show is to show you that you can live an energized, sustainable life both at home and at work. My attempt is to keep it real with stories, interviews, and random thoughts. This is not a business or career podcast, and it's not a parenting podcast. It's both and so much more. You will laugh, you will cry, and you may even get a little frustrated with the truth you've been hiding from yourself. I believe all human behavior is a language, whether it's through your children, your health, or your relationships. And when you learn to listen instead of react, we begin to understand what it truly means to feel alive and in control. It's time to ditch self-sacrifice and step into your brave zone. You are a magical unicorn making an impact in the community. So welcome, Karen, to the show.
Thank you so much, Heather. I'm happy to be here today.
So we had a mutual connection that that connected us, and I'm doing the gratitude gift giving campaign, and I wanted to give back to my local community. I know everyone who's purchasing from it won't necessarily be in Windsor, Essex, Ontario, or even Canada. So it's really appreciated when we're getting outside awareness, making an impact in a local community. But I wanted to pick a women, well, you have it right behind you, the House of Sophrosyne, empowering women. I can't see the last part. What does it say? Empowering women through their recovery. So if you want to talk a little bit about what you do there and how it's supporting women in the community.
So I'm the executive director at the House of Sophrosyne. I've been with the organization now for 15 years. We are, originally, when the House of Sophrosyne was started 42 years ago, the intent was there was a lot of services for men that had alcohol or drug addiction issues. There was never anything for women. So there was a small group that started it out of a church originally. And it was for really those housewives that were really struggling. You knew they had a problem, but they were busy. They were, home, taking care of the kids, taking care of the house, and there was no services for them. So they kind of started a small group. Well, over the years, that group has really grown into what the House of Sophrosyne is today. And we are a continuum of addiction services, I would say. Because addictions is not, you go into a program and let's say our program is 5 weeks. You don't go into a 5-week program after having an issue for years and years, and all of a sudden, miraculously, you're cured. You need that ongoing support because like you, like me, I know me for sure, you have great times in your life and then you have not so great times in your life. And you need those support services in place in case you relapse. So our residential, it started out as a residential program, and that one is 35 days, 5 weeks, and individuals can come and actually live at our facility and get really intensive addiction services. But then we also have a number of other services that we offer. So we have pre-treatment, so getting you ready to come into treatment. We've got day treatment services. We've got programs for moms with their children. Mothers in recovery. We've got fathers in recovery, because it doesn't just affect mom, depending on who has the addiction issue. What we want to do is provide that same message and that same care for the whole family structure, so that everybody's kind of going through that recovery process, the same message, the same education and the same knowledge. So
what is what is Sophrosyne? There's a definition.
So Sophrosyne is a Greek goddess of moderation, and it means a wise and balanced life. And isn't what that we all want?
Isn't interesting. I always, at the first conversation we were having, there's a lot of stigma around addiction. And I know in current years, what is the language that we should be using around addiction? We shouldn't say they're an addict. What are we saying? How do we not talk about people with it? Everyone's affected by it, by the way. You can pretend you're not, or it's not going to happen to you. It doesn't discriminate. And it is not just in certain communities, it's all over. And, there's people who are functioning in society who are struggling. So can you just talk a little bit about that? I guess the languaging behind it.
Substance use disorder is kind of the term that's being used now. And you're right, there's a lot of stigma, and addictions touches everybody, whether it be yourself, whether it be a loved one. It's mothers, fathers, children, aunts, uncles. It does. It really affects everybody. And I think what we really want to stress is that you don't have to struggle with this disease alone.
So what was the turning point when they started calling it a disease? Is it so you say substance abuse disorder?
Substance use disorder, SUD.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, so someone is diagnosed with that? Mm-hmm. Okay. And how are they diagnosed?
It could be their family physician. Usually an individual has a pretty good idea that they have a substance use disorder, or it could be even they're misusing substances. So they're relying on going home to cope with stress or difficult situations by turning to a drink, and a drink turns to 2 drinks, and it becomes 2 times a week, then it becomes 4 times a week. Then they're having a hard time going to work the next morning. So it usually follows a progressive pattern. Mm-hmm. And usually an individual knows when other people are telling them or they're recognizing the signs, it's become now problematic.
So when we start treating this disease or people with this disease, because I had cancer 7 years ago, and the cancer world is interesting because there's a lot of compassion around it. There's a whole cancer wing. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever been in the cancer center, it's a very different feeling than when you walk into the general hospital. You're treated differently, in a positive way. And I don't like that around disease. Why is it oh, you've had cancer, right? But if you had substance abuse disorder, there's the stigma around it of you're dirty, you're gross, there's something wrong with you. You're not, suck it up, buttercup. You wouldn't say that to somebody diagnosed with cancer, just get over it, right? So it's really reframing this in your mind around your belief systems and the stories that you're telling yourself about this person. They can't just suck it up, buttercup. So what do you, and I think as the individual, there's a lot of shame. Obviously there's a lot of trauma. I don't think a lot of people talk about that enough. They just think people wake up one day and decide to, misuse drugs or alcohol. But can you talk a little bit about how trauma impacts that?
Yeah, so you touched on some great points there, Heather. So just a little bit about myself and my background. I had, my mother passed away from cancer when she was 54. And my sister died from addictions. So I know all too well that addictions they see as someone's choice. They chose to pick up drugs and they chose to use them and misuse them. My mother, it wasn't a choice. She all of a sudden was diagnosed with cancer, when in reality, for my sister, what we have come to learn through the years is we believe that there was a traumatic incident that happened at a high school dance that she went to. And that really was kind of the turning point for her. She was hospitalized. Her life kind of really spiraled out of control from that point on. She went to the doctors. The doctor prescribed her antidepressants. Antidepressants led to pain pills, and the story goes on from there. So I wouldn't exactly say that she woke up, as you said. People think you wake up one day and I think I'm going to be an addict today. That's not what happened. And it was really that traumatic event in her past that kind of led to a coping mechanism that spiraled out of control. And one thing that I say with people that may not really truly understand the disease of addiction is you never really know somebody's past, what happened to them, what is the story behind their addiction. And I think that is what we need, people that, that carry that stigma to really understand. And it usually takes when it affects them or a loved one, then they kind of realize, yeah, I guess I was, my thinking might have been a little bit off. And, it's really having that compassion to understand the story behind that person's and that individual's substance use.
I think I'm like, oh, if we keep going, I'm going to be a ball of tears in a moment. And I think because we all have stories and we all have people in our past that we have loved or love, and you just see them sinking and we don't know how to support them. So this is going out around the holiday season. We're in the middle of a pandemic. It's going to look very different this year. A lot of people are struggling with their mental and emotional health. And I've said over and over again in the past few months that what you resist will persist and grow bigger. That's not my quote. Someone else said that. And I don't remember who coined the term. But right now we're seeing a lot of what is not sustainable. So if somebody had a hard time coping previously and now maybe has lost their job, or just, the uncertainty and the routines being changed, or the pressure in their home where maybe they're not the ones who have had misuse of substances before, but maybe it's their family member and they're feeling the pressure of that. Like, we're just not realizing the bigger picture here. And there's so many people living in their little tiny bubbles. And I would say I'm one of those people. I work online. I work from home. I don't really have to leave my house, which is really annoying, but I'm used to this. But there are a lot of things going out there in the world. So someone that is in the community, can you talk about what you've noticed as an organization shift in 2020?
I think definitely with COVID, it has had a huge impact. Not only those individuals that, like you said, may have been suffering from addictions prior, they may be finding themselves now using again, they've relapsed, or their situation has even escalated. But we're seeing a lot of people that didn't have an addiction issue before now are finding they are what's turned to a drink a week. You might have a glass of wine with dinner. We're now having 2, 3, and 4 glasses of wine. There's a lot of people we're hearing that it's the pressures from work. It's the pressures from working frontline during COVID. It's the pressures from trying to, now you're working from home and and there's no divide anymore. Your life at home has now become your work life as well. So there's so many different factors that are really affecting people's mental health, where they normally had really good coping skills before, are finding they don't have those same coping skills now. And that's when we start getting into the problem of how are you coping. And that's where I think setting some good healthy boundaries, self-care is really, really important right now, because everybody, and like I said, it's not just if you go home, it might be your partner or your children. They're stressed out from what they're experiencing and trying to cope with. And it's just really compiling into a really big potential for disaster, to be honest.
I saw an image on Instagram, and it was a healthcare, like it was a cartoon, and it was a healthcare worker underwater holding their arms up and like a hospital bed with a sick patient on the bed. And somebody shared it, and I have goosebumps just talking about it right now, because yes, obviously the hospitals and frontline workers, but it, like, the trickle down effect, like everybody has been affected by this differently. And I work in the space of, I talk a lot about, my target market is mothers. And, I've been talking more about, like, I talk about parenting, but it's really about, like, what are you doing? And just the pressure, right, of trying to work from home, take care of your children, and, keep your shit together and just do it all. And I'm like, listen, we have to take the pressure off of ourselves. And my number one goal this year was just, do my children feel safe and loved? Like, I don't care if they don't read a book or do any, like, I'm like, schools, it's not happening. Like, it's just, I'm taking all the pressure off and just trying to be. But one of the biggest, I don't know who told me this, what to say to somebody else when you feel overwhelmed is, I don't have the capacity for that right now. And the hardest thing for me, being a recovering rescuer, so I have a social work background, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, but we are brainwashed to rescue people. Brainwash, especially when you have such a big, loving, caring heart. That's why you go into the industry, into that, it's not an industry, I guess it is, I don't know, that line of work. And when the rescuers or the frontline workers are drowning too, the leaders, the quote unquote strong ones, it's like, we all have to learn how to lift ourselves up. And, a little, text message can go a long way to improve somebody's quality of life. Like, thinking of you, I don't have the capacity right now, I just want you to know I care about you. Like, there's little tiny things that we can do. But it's been a challenge for me, not wanting to go in and rescue everyone else when I feel like, there's times where I'm just like gulping for air. And I think we all have our own struggles. Yes. And we can't do this, what's it called? Like comparative suffering, like they're suffering more than me, or, I just think it's so, so important that we're all sitting here going, what can I do for myself, instead of trying to fix everybody else, because we're all drowning in some capacity.
Mm-hmm. But women really, we're usually the primary caregivers.
You've been bred to nurture. It is annoying as shit to recondition yourself, to nurture yourself too.
And it's, but what happens when we start to nurture ourselves?
We can nurture others better. Oh, guilt. Yeah. That's my hashtag, drop the guilt. It's my life mission.
How dare you think of yourself?
You get called a bitch and selfish.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And the minute women set boundaries and no, that's it. I can't help you because I'm empty. And if we're empty, we need to fill up our cup in order to share that cup with other people. But what happens, like you said, we feel guilty. We feel that we don't really have any right to not think about, we should be thinking about others and not ourselves.
So I know that this is a huge barrier for women who enter your program because one, I have actually sent people to your program, and I've personally seen the mental and physical barriers that people have. We're up against our primal instincts, which are to take care of our children. And so when someone is struggling with their own coping strategies, and if they have children, and it's like, I cannot put myself first. I cannot take care of me. There's people that are dependent on me, and entering that. And I know you have a campaign coming up, or a bigger financial goal. So I'm like mildly pressuring people into really purchasing those gratitude gifts, so that because the more we sell, the more we can give. Can you talk about your future vision for the House of Sophrosyne and what you're creating as an organization and community?
Yeah, so we're pretty excited because we purchased a larger property, and we'll be able to double our beds in our new facility. But more importantly than that, we will be sort of cutting edge in our area, because moms will finally be able to come into treatment with their children. So small children, 0 to 6, will actually be able to live here with mom. So mom can get the help that she needs, but not have to worry about finding a safe, secure place for her children while she does something for herself, and that's to get the help that she needs. So this is going to be an amazing opportunity, where it's not, I mean, there's very, very few places. I believe there's one up in Northern Ontario, but there's very few places that can offer such an opportunity. And moms, it's statistically proven that moms do not access treatment, and by the time that they do, their lives are really, really in a bad way because of that. They're a mom first. Mm-hmm. And even though they may not be fulfilling their motherly duties because of their addiction, they still, in their heart, they're a mom first. Yeah. So now we'll be able to provide that opportunity for a woman to come and live with their children and get the help that they so desperately need and deserve.
Mm. And just how you started this conversation, that, you know, the House of Sophrosyne started how many years ago?
42.
And this is still fresh for women to have their own space for recovery. You know, if out there in society, if a man goes into treatment, he gets a pat on the back. If a woman goes into treatment, it's not necessarily a pat on the back and like, good for you. Women and men are treated very different culturally. I won't get on my soapbox about patriarchy, but there's still a lot that we're pushing up against with the stigma of that. So knowing, one, to get help, two, there's just so many barriers that you have to push through in order to receive treatment. And I don't think people really understand the impact of that on an individual when you have somebody in your life that is challenged.
Well, quite often women, and we've heard women come in and tell us, or they share in group, that how dare you be using drugs and when you have children that you should be taking care of. Do you know the effect that you're going to have on these kids? That's not fair. Women, for somebody to come into treatment, kudos to you for taking that first step, for actually taking that leap, that you're doing something to care for yourself and to deal with some of these. It could be the trauma, as we talked about, from your past. We don't know what happened to that woman. Did she have abuse in her past or in her marriage, or, that led to her situation and circumstances? That doesn't make her a bad mom. It makes her a great mom, that she's actually going to take that step and do something to get her life back in order. So, I commend the women that really have that courage to do that. And that's how we have to perceive it as a society, that it's a great opportunity and a great step in the right direction.
And what I am a huge advocate of, and part of the reason why I did this campaign, is women helping women. And the more, I guess, intimate and vulnerable conversations I have with women about their past in female relationships, what I've heard over and over and over again is the breakup of a woman and another woman in her life, whether it was a mother, a sister, a friend, is almost more painful than a breakup, like a relationship breakup. Mm-hmm. And obviously, depending on your sexual identity, that's not really what I'm talking about. I just feel like female to female, there's something deeper. Like, we are very intimately connected. But what I notice is if you've had a lot of like trauma in those relationships, it's very traumatic on you, one, to trust other women, to put yourself in those situations. I work a lot, with women in groups, and how triggered, and myself included, how triggered we are to be in those intimate settings with other women because we've been so hurt in the past. And I think repairing that, and regardless of what it is, it's like, if somebody has done something to you, what has that gifted you in your life, right? Like, what is the gift? How did that propel you forward? And so by giving, this gratitude giving a tiny message of gratitude to another woman is not only like, you have no idea the impact that is going to make in her life. And I truly believe if women support women, no more judgment, no more like looking her up and down and judging her for what her body looks like, because maybe you're secretly jealous or you're judging, whatever it is, no more judging for her ambition or her financial situation. No more judgment if she wants to be a stay-at-home mom or if she wants to go out and work. No more judgment if she stays in the marriage or if she leaves the marriage. No more judgment if she, is misusing substances, because it is just, we need to stop and we need to start supporting each other. You don't need to understand anybody's story. You don't have to have any evidence. No one needs to prove anything to you, but a little, what's going on? How can I help you? And you know what? Maybe you don't even know, but you just give with no freaking attachment to the outcome. Because I am so tired of people judging other people. And, we're all in recovery for this ourselves, to be able to just stop, because you do not understand the impact that you have when you're projecting your anger, your fear, your judgment onto somebody else, because she's just going to retreat and feel lonely. And culturally, we're supposed to be in community. And we're living in a society where we're isolated, and now more than ever, extremely isolated. I briefly talked about cancer, but in my book, Dying to Be a Good Mother, one of the stories I talk about was community, where I didn't ask for it, and people were just putting food on my porch, or being like, here's an envelope of money. Don't ask, just take it and go. And what a privilege to have that opportunity to do that. Like, to be in a position and know that not everybody has that opportunity. So really stepping up your game and knowing that just a message, a text message can make such an impact on somebody. So what do you say to that person who knows somebody is struggling this right now, today, with substance misuse? And, we go into rescuer mode, we go into enabler mode, and we want to help, fix. But what do you suggest that somebody can do to make an impact in that person's lives without trying to fix them or constantly show them like, come on, get help. Because I think, again, you're just like beating, like, they're like, no shit, I need help. I just can't right now. So what can somebody do to still cultivate a relationship with somebody, but not constantly remind them that they have an addiction if they're not ready to receive help yet?
Be there and listen. And that's one of our hardest things. Like you said, innately, we want to fix.
Incredibly challenging.
We want to fix. And you're right, it is. But just listen. They call you up. They want to talk. They want to share. Listen. And you know what? If they have somebody supportive, just listening, it may be that they've never shared that trauma with anybody in their life. And they have somebody that's sitting there totally 100% focused on listening and hearing their story. That makes a world of difference.
But what do you do? Where do you draw the line with your own personal boundaries? If that person, obviously every relationship is unique. Where do you draw the line when you have to cut them out of your life?
And you know what? That does happen. It happens. And that's, to be honest with you, so kind of going back to my sister's situation, my parents kind of coped with my sister's addiction very differently. My dad they were both givers. I admit they were both givers, but my dad continued to give and give and give and give, where my mother had to kind of draw that line and say, no, I can't do it anymore. And I think that everybody has to cope with it in their own way. But that's why the House of Sophrosyne started the family program that we have. And that was my desire. I always said before I left this organization, we will have a family program, because I watched my parents and myself as well, being a sibling, we wanted to, we had the lights on a timer.
That's okay. This is real life. Things happen. I'm surprised a child hasn't walked in my office yet. It's okay.
We want, my parents wanted to help. We wanted to help, but we didn't know how. What was the best way to help? So we've started a family program so that people can, it's a support group as well. So they can come and they can share, to hear, I'm not alone. It's so important to know that you're not the only one. You're not the only parent, because parents feel they failed, right? If something goes wrong, you failed as a parent. That's not true. Individuals do make choices, and consequences of those choices is the result. But it's not the parent making that choice. It's the child making the choice. Or
I just want to say I'm so grateful that you just said that, because again, stigma that our children's behavior, regardless if they're 2, 10, 30, 50, are a reflection of something that we have done wrong, and also understanding it's individual choice, and there can be something bigger at play. And maybe there is trauma connected, but as an individual, right? I've had to do a lot of personal healing from past generations. Yeah. And, I look at, my parents' parents, and now I can look at my mother and say, how the hell did you get out alive? Like, how did you survive? And from a place of gratitude. And I've personally had to do a lot of healing around that. And it is an individual's responsibility.
Yes.
We can't take that on.
And I always say too, Heather, that I believe any one of us is one episode or one event away from a mental health or addiction issue. It can happen to anybody and quickly, without even realizing. And all of a sudden, where you thought your life was great and something happens, and now you can't get out of bed in the morning. You can't function. You can't go to work. You're calling in sick now 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. And that can happen to any one of us. But the important thing, as I said, it's having that courage or that friend to help you to reach out for the help. And that is the key, is we're not alone. And like you said, there's so many women, and I'm so inspired just sitting here talking to you and what you've been through, and your courage and strength and what you do now. And there's so many people out there that are there to help and there to provide that support. And when I say help, oh, I'm so sorry.
It's all good. I can still see you.
Okay. That support to help you get back up on that horse and continue that ride.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, this is so amazing. So where can people, I know I could talk to you forever. Where can people, I know people listening or watching to this are not necessarily in Windsor, Essex, maybe not in Ontario, maybe not in Canada, but for those, I know you have some resources. Obviously the House of Sophrosyne, you like where, talk about that website, what's on there, Ontario resources, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, so we are a provincial resource. So we take people from all over Ontario. And to reach us, you can call us 519-252-2711. Our website is www.sophrosyne.ca. If you're from out of town and you can't make it to our program and need an addiction resource, you can go visit Connex or Connex Ontario, CONNEX Ontario. They have a whole list of programs and services that they can match you up with. And then I know there are, if you're outside of Ontario, there are just search addiction programs on the web. There's a lot of 1-800 numbers, and they can do an assessment. They can do and match you up with whatever the best fit for your needs are.
And I would also recommend, one, I like your website because the phone number is like right on the top of the website. So it's easily accessible. When someone needs help, there's so many barriers to get to. And I do believe, and this is just one of those things, when someone wants help, where do I go? Right. And getting that, finding that support is really difficult. So if you're somebody that maybe knows people who are struggling with addiction, I've seen a lot of this on Facebook too, which I like. I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with social media, but when it's used for good, maybe just doing a quick Google search, for a few resources for your town, country, wherever you are, having those in your back pocket, maybe sharing them publicly, just sharing them with somebody who, you have that relationship with where they actively know, because you're planting seeds constantly, but just having those resources ahead of time can make a big impact, or even just mental health services if people are struggling. Because I get a lot of questions about that, whether it's from friends or family, or just people. And to be honest, half the time I don't know where to send them because the resources are always changing because they are funded by the government and programs are changing constantly. So just doing a quick Google search, you might be able to find something.
Yeah. And usually in the communities, each community usually has like a local mental health and addiction assessment center. So they can usually research that. And that is where they'll use the assessment tools. And that's where they're going to kind of see what level of service and the best match you up with the service. So that's another option.
Awesome. Karen, thank you so much for your time today. I know you have a full
it's a
plate.
little dark in here.
I can still see you. But thank you again for your time today. And for everyone listening, you can head on over to, we're going to do it until December 4th. And then depending on the need, we may extend it a little bit, but can't guarantee that your recipient will receive their gratitude message before the holidays. But if you go to my name, so Heather Chauvin, last name is spelled CHAUVIN.com/pay-it-forward, or just go to my main website, heatherchauvin.com. You'll see it in a black bar right at the top. That is the gift giving, I don't even know what I just said, pay it forward, gratitude, gift giving opportunity that we are doing this holiday season. And you'll see all of the details there. And a portion of the proceeds are going to the House of Sophrosyne. So the more we give, the bigger impact we're going to make, the bigger the donation we can make. And I just truly believe it's the butterfly effect, right? The little ripples can go a long way. And it's way more than the donation. It's more about the message, but also, that priceless gift of showing another woman in your life the impact that you've made, that she has made on your life, can go a long way. So again, thank you, Karen, for being here.
Thank you, Heather, and thanks for all you do. And you really are impacting so many people globally with your message and the work that you're doing to support other women. So kudos to you and thank you so much.